I think you mentioned a little bit there about speed and reactivity, and I guess another thing that I see you like push quite a bit in training is plyo work. And that's actually been the work I'm really trying to focus on with midlife and older people and myself, because I'm now in the midlife stage myself, right? Is maintaining that springiness. Because when you lose that springiness, that's when you start to feel old. And no one likes that. How important have you found that to be in training people? And again, where could somebody start and build up from?
Yeah, so I think that is something that I started like last couple of years, and it came about as a result of my background was rugby, and I played sport all my life. But then when I stopped playing rugby in my 20s, I stopped doing much stuff that I was actually dynamically loading my body, and I was lifting some heavy weights, I was running, I was doing some endurance stuff, but I just felt like there was something missing, and kind of alluded to there. It's just like start to feel a little bit slow, and you start to lose a little bit of confidence in your body. And particularly for me, like the knee injuries that I've had, my ACL, I've done meniscus, done all these things. It's like confidence that I had in my body to jump over something and land it, or that sort of thing. I think that starts to go as you get older, particularly if you don't do any of that. And a couple of my more recent clients online have said almost exactly that. They started to second guess themselves just dropping off a low wall or jumping over a gate or that sort of thing. Because if you're not sort of actively adding some of that into your training, then you're probably not going to be doing a huge amount of that. One thing that I noticed, that like when I did my ACL, it was like, I can't remember how many years ago now, like maybe 8 years or something. I rehabbed it and it was all good. But when I started doing some plyo stuff, I started to notice a bit more of a deficit, left versus right, just in terms of that last little bit of reactivity. And actually by doing more of that, I almost hadn't noticed it until I started doing more plyo stuff and noticing the slight difference that I had between the left and the right. So that was a big learning curve from my perspective. And the other thing as well, again, just like from a personal perspective, like I never really understood how to bridge the gap between controlling down like your bottom squat position versus dynamically catching a clean, for example, in the bottom position. I always struggle with that dynamic loading and feeling confident in my body to catch those bottom positions. And just adding in more like plyo work has actually helped me a lot in terms of, I guess, just putting a framework together for myself to actually bridge that gap of building that confidence. There's two elements that I think are very useful. True plyometrics, which are basically focusing on getting back off the floor once you've landed as quickly as possible, which is going to rapidly load your tendons, particularly like the Achilles, building in quite a bit of low intensity volume with that before saying more volumes and more intensities to that. I think there's a massive amount of benefit in terms of that. And most people in the gym will look at you like you're a bit of an idiot jumping around, but actually those kind of dynamic landings and the rapid loading of the tendon you don't really get unless you're doing some specific plyometric stuff. So that's really useful. And then the other element is where you're looking to absorb force into those deeper ranges. This is something that I followed Matt McGuinness-Watson for a little while, and I went to a seminar that he ran. He calls it deep tier plyos, where you're basically like loading into deeper ranges and learning to absorb force into those deeper ranges. And that kind of builds all the way up to depth drops where you're jumping off a high box to kind of catch that landing, or like our example earlier, like being like on a wall and jumping off and knowing that your knee's not going to explode as you land, sort of thing. Be confident that you've got the coordination and the strength through that range to control that. And I think in terms of actually adding that in 5 to 10 minutes as part of a warm-up for most people, it preps you really well for going in and lifting because you've already been exposed to those deeper ranges.
And just listening to you there, it seems like most of the benefits come from when you land and you bounce back out, as opposed to simply just jumping up. And I saw it somewhere, maybe it was like a random reel or something, where somebody was basically saying that just doing box jumps isn't really doing plyometrics, and it goes way further than that. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I used to include box jumps into my training just because I thought I should probably have some sort of plyo work in. And, I'd try and jump as high as I could and stack the boxes on top of each other. And I don't know exactly where I must have gotten to 120 centimeters. Like I was able to like leap up to two 60 centimeter boxes, just about. I'm not really sure, because I never really measured it, how much that made a difference to my athletic ability or my ability to produce force or my ability to withstand forces either. And it's only recently where this year, maybe like 5 months ago now, and I realized I've got some knee injury. And based on my own self-diagnosis, I kind of it gave off symptoms of a meniscus tear. So I was like, all right, fine, cool. And I didn't really manage it very well because I had this very sort of silly notion of I don't want my legs to get smaller. So I just kept plowing through on the leg press. And every time it got better, I reintroduced some sort of squats or something like that. And I've just been yo-yoing until this last couple of weeks where I decided, okay, I'm going to stop now. I'll have to deal with it another way. Somebody recommended to like depth jumps, and I was just like, I'd never thought about that side of things before. I've seen it and I watch people do it, but I've never added it into my training, and it never appealed to me because as a younger man, the only thing I cared about was how much weight I could lift and how jacked I was. And then even later on, it was just like doing the handstands and the front levers and everything. That was still kind of like a really cool thing to do. I wasn't thinking about my ability. I didn't realize I would lose my ability to move quickly and sprint and be able to be explosive and jump, because I still kind of had that in moments. And now it's really important, and especially with having an injured knee, and then you start to worry about, wait, is that it? Is it gone now? Am I never going to get that back? I imagine most people, when they think about plyometrics, they simply think about somebody jumping up. They're not actually very clear on what the training looks like and, you know, what the benefits are and why they should be incorporating it, especially if they are like midlife and older people, because it does, again, it strikes the image of a young person doing it when actually it seems like it's mostly beneficial for people that are sort of 40 plus or even 35 plus, so that we're actually able to maintain that. One of the examples I always used to give to people, which is ridiculous that I was saying this to people and I'm just giving you that whole story, I always used to give the example of jumping over the fence. So if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you were to just come outside and jump over a fence every single day, you wouldn't suddenly wake up one day and having lost your ability to jump that fence. You might notice that over time it became a bit harder to do so, but there wouldn't be this immediate loss of that ability. And now I feel like I should be saying that to myself.
Well, just on that, mate, one thing since I got into doing more plyo stuff is I noticed just how much my little boys, all they do is run, and the eldest in particular, he just jumps all the time, climbs up on the sofa, jumps off, just like broad jumps just down the street and stuff like that. And obviously it's just play, but it's when you look at what most adults are doing from a training perspective, they're going in and lifting some weights and all that stuff is really good, but actually like that kind of athletic component of like sprinting, running, jumping, throwing, hanging on stuff, swinging on stuff, that sort of stuff that you just do as play as a child. A lot of people just don't do any of that, and obviously there's bigger barriers in terms of just like where would you do it and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think when you kind of look at it from that context, it's like just the amount of volume of landings that he does, and it's like if an adult was doing that, people are like, oh, watch out, watch your knees, that sort of thing. But it's like, and obviously there's a force element to that. Like he's quite small, so like the load going through is not that much. It's training in a way of building and maintaining that capacity. Actually, just like engineering that and putting some form of that into your training, I think is going to be beneficial for most people for just holding on to that athletic ability for as long as possible.
I completely agree.